Welcome. Let there be light, and there was light. Okay, so the words of the said God, Mother Eve, and the mother of wisdom, and the mother of words. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. So we are talking about scriptures, we are talking about numerology. Most of all, we are talking about why all this talk. Yes, it's really about the third eye, and everything just boils down to wisdom, the word wisdom. And this is why we see in the book of Proverbs, it's dedicated about wisdom. It's dedicated to seeking wisdom. And of course, we have wisdom in the book of Proverbs for everyday wisdom. And in the book of Ecclesiastics as well, our book of Solomon. Of course, we learn that Solomon was the wisest of all men. This is another thing as well. I have never been able to really digest that people would think one man would have so many wives. Why? In my kind of understanding, how could it even happen that a man would be so wise and to have that many wives, that he would have this interaction with so many wives, meeting their needs. Of course, if he was wise, he would have to find ways of meeting their needs, and to acquire such wisdom. Well, that wasn't really making much sense to me. It never really had made much sense to me. Plus, he had, I think, 300 wives and that reminds me, 300 wives. I think it's 300 wives and 700 concubines. Now, the story of Job is about 7 sons and 3 daughters. We are talking about the threes as well. I'm going to double check how those numbers vary or correlate. But these are things that is so important for us to see. So talking about numbers, I just want to draw on the significance of number 14, because that's the number I think that is the bedrock of everything. We have heard a lot about number 13, but it seemed like another number had been sort of concealed, so we don't get to know much about it, and we get lost into the fear of number 13, of course, not knowing enough about number 13, which is something that we have been again conditioned by. So I would really like that we pay a little bit more attention to number 14 as well, because 13, of course, is very crucial. We cannot rule out number 13 at all. But I have done a lot on number 13. If you're new to this channel, this is where we are talking about number 13. Number 13 is really that B symbol right there, which is the bond, which is blood, which is agreement, which is breast. It is the nourishment. This is where people shake hands. It is harmony, because it represents number 2. It is union, it is fellowship, it's all those other aspects as well. But it's 13. 1 plus 3 is 4, so it's also foundation. Of course, when people agree on something, they form a foundation on whatever it is they have agreed upon. This is why the scriptures also say, where 2 or 3 shall agree upon a thing, there it shall be according to my Father which is in heaven. Now, I may not be quoting exact words right here, which I like to be able to do with the book of the version of King James. But when I do the numerical values, then I'm more precise, or wanting to be more precise, because we are talking numbers right there. Okay, so this is what we are talking about here, and this is the of course the template of Mother Eve here. So when we are talking numbers, this is what we really want to do. I'm talking about 14. I hadn't even noticed, and 14 is right here. This is where I talk about synchronicity. I love it when those things happen because that's exactly what I really wanted to do. So number 14, I am really going to say, is the only number that I have come across that I think I'm going to double check, but I think it's the only number that I have come across from numbers 1 to 20 that really mirrors itself. Now, I have done this in numerous presentations, but I really want to do this implicitly by itself, so we really look at the essence of 14. So of course, it also makes me think about the teens, being in teens, in your teens. Of course, this is where you are in your puberty, and you are really get in that middle stage. So a lot of hormones, a lot of your hormones are all over the place at this stage, meaning everything is at a hype stage because they have not, it's like they're in transit, or they are traveling rather, trying to find their place, trying to find recognition. And it's no wonder we often hear about 13 and not really 14. Of course, I think there's something about 14 with the G 14, or something to that effect, which is the United Nations something, or of about the 14, which I won't go too much into that now because it's not coming very clear right now. But we see with number 4, for instance, what I also like with the word 14, it has this hour in it, which also says like hour, HOUR as well. It's like time came into this equation right here as well. I know it is like I'm talking about hour, meaning inclusive of every one of us here, but I'm also hearing with the spirit of sound mind that time, it's like the F was almost meaning like an H turned upside down or something to that effect, but it is really like calling us, calling, it's like it encapsulates everything that we are, the 4 corners of the earth, the 4 elements, the 4 seasons, the 4 gospels, the 4 our north, south, east and west, basically our news, NEW NEWS, which is right here. So this is really our news here. And of course, when we do the numerical value for the word 4, it equals 24. 2 plus 4 equals 6. So we can see that it has so much in it. There under the word revelation, there's the L here. It's like we have the lever right there. It's that L, or like our feet, to take us into this new dimension. So we have got that key. When we are in 4, we also have that key. It's not just about having that 5 here. 4 also gives us that, because when we have looked at this part here, or developmental stage, which I called here the developmental stage, this is meant to be the D, which is really our north, south, east and west. D is offering us a half of the perspective of the dimensions, you could say. So we are all able to see the 2D, or we are in the 3D, whatever it is, or whatever D we are looking at. But we are offered the opportunity to look at our north, south, east and west, which then, when we are able to make sense of our orientation, there we know that we are doing news. We are here in the news. We are doing news because we are in the mouth. We have opened a new door, we could say. We have unlocked. There's a lock. The word lock equals 5. and ki equals 5, and breath equals 5. So we breathe something new right there. So that's what we are talking about. 4. Now, of course, we are talking about 14, but we were looking at 4 here implicitly in this stage. And as I say, wherever I come across a word with 3 5s in it, I believe Mother Eve is very present there. The 5s, because these are again 3 5s 15, which is reflective of your new again. All this is 5 and EW, and there we have Mother Eve, because the 5 actually is a representation of the masculine and feminine in union. So there is perfect balance. In fact, number 5 is perhaps the most implicit number that we have between 1 and 9. Why is it so implicit in that stage? It stands by its in the middle, but you could also imagine it at the top of it's the top of the pyramid. It balances on all sides, because there we have 4 numbers, 1 2 3 4, and then we have 6 7 8 9. So there are numbers on either sides, and of course this is what we see offers us the opportunity to understand Mother Eve as in the serpent, as in Mother Eve as the said God, as the kundalini, as the pineal gland, as well, Christ, the Christ spirit. I like to say the Christ spirit because everyone knows or hear about Christ, but I also want to make it very clear now that I am not seeing the Jesus and Christ as the same. Although in my earlier videos I knew I was able to make sense of Jesus Christ as 7, because it all adds up. It all adds up. Jesus is the first master number, and of course it's 11, and then perfection right there. So, but the point I am making here is that it's the Christ spirit here, and I made this observation in the book of Luke. In the book of Luke, the writer does not mention Jesus much, and he does not mention Christ much. He mentions he. Very often there is a he or Lord, and of course we know Lord, that there were different lords, or people will had the Lord title, and so it does leave the reader, I mean, it is enough to leave the reader asking, well, who exactly is being spoken of here? That he, it's not saying, well, Christ or Jesus, not much at all. There is a very particular way of writing in that book that really makes me think that the book is cleverly written to really get people who are not too open to this scrutiny, if you like, of the writings, and just really ready to just swallow what had been preached down from the pulpit, and then just make sense of, just follow it accordingly. Now I am looking at, because I am looking at numbers, I am looking at words very close. I am looking at them closer, in the sense of wanting to know who is being spoken of, and why haven't they used a capital H in this sense that would have been to make sense of this Christ after giving this record of his crucifixion and resurrection, and not even making an acknowledgement of that presence or representation of who he really is. But I believe that it is like wanting to give a true account, but however, it is written in a way that could also take the reader into a certain into other areas, how we have been conditioned, basically. So in the book of Luke as well, as I made mention before as well, that Christ, here we learn about Jesus, had asked his disciples to go find a man with the pitcher and find him and follow him. Now, I believe that that was talking directly about a Kundalini experience or rise. Find a man with the pitcher of water. Water, we are talking about the said God, Mother Eve. We are talking about Mother Eve, and follow him up, follow the into whatever room that is going into the high chamber. This is where Christ is meant to have his last supper. This is where the word Christ comes in as well. So have his supper with the disciples in the high chamber. So that supper, for instance, or last meal, what it is like there, one it's again on par with Christ, with Mother Eve, teaching us how to eat of the fruit. So this is where I'm saying the word chamber equals 5, and of course and mouth equals 5 as well. So let's go back to number 14. So I was looking at number 14, and I am now saying I really want to draw some emphasis on this, is that the word Eve, E-V-E, so we've done this, I know, we've done it several times and we keep going over it, but this is 5, 4, 5, and when we add these together is number 14. So this is what I am saying, that 14 gives us a mirror image of itself. Now, to me, that is very significant, in the sense of that this 14, of course, is what we have discovered, that we have 14 gods in Genesis. So 9 gods in Genesis of chapter 1 and 5 gods in Genesis of chapter 2. So there we have 5 plus 9 is 14. Now, of course, we see 14 is Mother Eve. Now, Eve, now I did check that the meaning of Eve is really that not that which happens, or that which takes place before that which is before any event takes place. So that is Eve. That is Eve. Eve is that which is complete, implicit, before any event takes place. So there is a presence, however, and you could say there is not a presence, but there is a presence. There is something or nothing or whatever that is before anything else happens. And that is the beauty and magic of Mother Eve, which is before any event takes place, but has the ability to cause an event to take place. That's what the waters was about. Okay, so we have spoken about number 14. I really feel that and as I say, I like the hour in there, because it really gives that implicit the completeness of who we are. So we are 14. If there is anything that is so true, that could be ever so true is number 14, to really say that we are 14 God, which coincides with the amount of gods that I have mentioned, but it also coincides with the ancient story of Osiris, which was chopped in 14 pieces, and of course 13 pieces were scattered all over, and then we had the his penis was found somewhere, and of course there were the and now that is the representation of the phallic signs all over the place. So we are seeing here, for instance, that Mother Eve is very present in all of this. And now Mother Eve is really saying, now you, the other 13 pieces that have been scattered, I want you to come home now. Let's get together. Let's put ourselves together and know who we are, what part we are playing, who we stand for, so that we can now get to move into this 8th dimension, which is also the 5th dimension, and to say, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. I like this. Mother Eve has just really told me that she's really happy with this last bit. But yes, it's really through a sensation. So this is where Mother Eve have now just said to as well, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So in the story of Mother Eve in the Bible, where we are now ending this 7,000-year cycle. We are ending this cycle and we are moving into this 8th cycle. Now remember, the number 8 is it really means set, like here, set, S-E-T. So it really forms a sort of cycle that then it's like a template. It is a template, and so that's why it is important that we shape ourselves and get a good sense of who we are, what we are, before we get set. Because when you get set, it's like putting water in the ice tray to freeze. And so when you freeze, that's what you are. You are only able to really hold that shape of what you are. So basically, that's what, whatever we go in with that dimension, we are being set up to that image. And let's make man in our image, after our likeness. Mother Eve is inviting us into this making of man. So basically, we are co-creators with Mother Eve. Now, basically, Mother Eve is really saying, I'm ready to hand this down to you, because right here, like the let, she's the Lord there. She's Lord. So she is really saying, I am ready to let the business to you. Like, I'm ready to let you take charge. I'm ready to let you take charge into this new dimension. So I want to really escort you into this new dimension. Now that new dimension, of course, have a certain requirement of us. So do join me on the next presentation, where I will be talking a little bit more about the Kundalini rise, in the sense of even with Christ, what the Christ spirit is. I have done numerous presentations on that, but there is something that came to my mind about Christ calling himself a worm, and that's what I want to talk about. So let there be light, and there was light, and spill over with love.